Party. What's going to happen if they get elected in the next UK general election? The ship is about to hit that iceberg over there called we're skint. Everything's got more expensive. What is it that is going to save the UK? Let's take a historical perspective and then let's take a realistic perspective. The top rate of income tax in the UK is currently 45%. Add on your national insurance and you're knocking on 50% as your top rate of personal tax. Go all the way back to the 1970s, the top rate of tax, put it in the comments, look at this, Labour Party, 98%. You remember that? So these figures are from the government or the Office of Budget Responsibility, and it shows that roughly, if we round it a little bit, the UK government is going to spend 1.2 trillion, or to put it another way, 1,200 billion. The income, on the other hand, 1.1 trillion. So the shortfall is roughly 100 billion pounds. What do the government spend their money on at the moment? So look at this pie chart. The NHS and welfare spending broadly is about half. Is there any likelihood that the amount of money that needs to be spent on welfare, social services, the NHS is going to go down? Well, looking at one of the major commitments that the Labour Party is making, the Labour Party is saying we're going to spend more money on the NHS and we're going to spend a lot more money on mental health. And they're actually talking about putting a mental health advisor into every single school in the whole of the UK. NHS waiting lists are out of control. There's 8 million people more than target on the waiting lists, and we're going to reduce that. So they're going to do things with GPs, they're going to give more money to GP surgeries, they're going to do more out of hours, they're going to make it more possible to get a GP appointment on the same day. I mean, everybody wants these things. But you've got to ask yourself the question, is it going to be more expensive or less expensive? It's going to be more expensive. Now let's look at the economy overall. Why is that relevant? Well, the economy overall, the GDP, the gross domestic product, that's the amount of money that the UK economy produces. It's been roughly 3 trillion, this is measured in US dollars, but it doesn't really matter. And it hasn't really moved since 2008. The amount of money that is moving through the economy from all the businesses and all the people and everybody that's creating money that the government can tax and take off them has stayed roughly flat. And if the government needs more and more money from an economy that's producing roughly the same amount of money, you are not going to be surprised to learn that the tax as a percentage of the GDP is going up and up and up. Because especially by the time you allow for inflation, the real inflation-adjusted GDP, the amount of money that UK PLC produces that the government can then get its mitts on, is going down. 3 trillion in 2010 was worth a lot more than 3 trillion in 2024, isn't it? Think back to what a pint of milk cost 14 years ago. Think back to what a gallon of petrol or a litre of petrol cost 14 years ago. Everything's got more expensive. Let's have a look at what percentage of the GDP the government already takes and then spends on public expenditure. And it's quite frightening. Look at this chart. Look at the United Kingdom, that $3 trillion that we talked about earlier on. 44% of that is already taken by the government. So which way, put it in the comments below please, which way do you think that that tax burden is going to go if the Labour Party are saying, well, we're going to reduce the waiting lists, we're going to recruit more doctors, we're going to recruit more nurses. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, by the way. I'm just saying that this is what they're saying they're going to do. Spend more money on the military to make sure that, you know, we don't get invaded by some nasty foreign country, which I'm in favour of that. All of these cost pressures are up. And in an economy that is flatlining, the tax burden is going to go higher and higher and higher. Now let's look at some other countries and where are they tax-wise? Well, you've got the United States. They're in the 30s. But look at Turkey. Turkey is in the 20s. 50, 60, 70% inflation every year. But even so, they're still only taking 20% of the GDP, not 40. So there's something fundamentally wrong. Now, what's your opinion? I'd love to hear from you as to who the hell is going to fix this. Whether the Labour Party gets elected or whether the Tories get elected, my view is that's just like moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. The ship is about to hit that iceberg over there called we're skint. The United Kingdom doesn't have enough money. It isn't growing its GDP. What's the solution? We need to come to a situation where work pays. There's far too many circumstances at the moment in which work simply does not pay, and it makes more economic sense to stay at home and do nothing. The second thing is, fundamentally, the size of the state needs to get smaller. What's the difference now between the Labour Party and the Tory Party? They're all agreeing on everything. They are the same party. If Sunak and Starmer were swapped, they could run each other's party. There's no fundamental difference like they used to be in the 60s and 70s and 80s. If you look back at the Kinnocks, and if you look back at the Thatchers, and if you look back at the Callahans, and if you look back at the Heaths, and all of these people, you know, you could agree or disagree with any of them, but at least they were different. At least they were saying, well, we could do this or we could do that. And there were significant differences in policy. Do you know what the only difference is now, essentially, between the Labour Party and the Tory Party? The Labour Party, if they're elected, are saying that they're going to put VAT on private school fees. In my view, it doesn't matter who gets elected. The United Kingdom is headed for an economic iceberg that is going to sink it. It's going to destroy it. So what is it that is going to save the UK? I don't know. But what I do know is it's not the current Labour or Tory party. But I don't want to leave you there with this message of gloom, doom and despair. I've spent quite a lot of time in this video giving you the background as to why I'm about to say what I'm about to say next. If you are waiting for the government to come and save you, you're going to be waiting a long time, the rest of your life. If you want to save yourself from economic gloom, doom and despondency, it's on you. And that's one of the key reasons that I started Touchstone Education 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago now. It's to help people that have decided, I've had enough of being abused by the tax system. I've had enough of being abused by the way in which we have to work. We have to sell our lives for money. And all the 8 billion that was wasted on PPE, and all of them giving contracts to each other. The corruption just stinks. The lack of direction is ridiculous. The percentage of GDP that they take away is just daft. And I fundamentally objected to paying tax in the UK, which is why I left. I still pay tons of tax in the UK because I've still got companies that employ 80 odd people. I pay VAT, I pay all sorts of stuff. You can't control what the world does to you. You can control what you do to the world. You are responsible for yourself. So if you get yourself into a situation where you've got assets, in my case it was fundamentally property, but if you've got assets that give you money in exchange for none of your time, now you've got choices. Now you can start to use limited company structures, limited liability partnerships. You can start to use pensions. You can start to use tax breaks. Because the one thing the government is never going to do is bite the hand that feeds it. So you can complain all you want about the system, or you can learn how the system works and you can use the system to benefit yourself and to benefit your family and your loved ones. And if that sounds like something that you want to do, subscribe to this channel, share this content with your friends, and start watching the hundreds of other videos. I left home at the age of 17 with £170. I was brought up in a Yorkshire mining village. That's it. Nobody financially gave me anything from the age of 17 onwards. And I now live here in Monaco. You've been wonderful. I've been Paul. See you next time.